Oh, Elden Ring. Oh! Jeez, Elden Ring. Oh! Elden Ring! Elden Ring! Alright, this isn't funny anymore. Come on! Elden Ring! Did you just ambush bomb again? You do realize the only reason you're living rent-free here at all is because Bomb likes your older brother Dark Souls, right? Don't pretend like you don't have to earn people's respect just because you've got the same genes as Dark Souls. He's smarter than you, he's got more charisma and personality than you. Heck, honestly, he's a heck of a lot less bloated than you are too. Where'd he go? For the love of... Why do you brag about how big your map is when all you offer in terms of level design is the same old ambushes around every single corner? Elden Ring looks like straight-up open-world Dark Souls. This might actually work, unlike all the other franchises attempting open-world for no reason. But Dark Souls is open-world. But no, that's not the same. Oh, so you're saying it's the same non-linear world design, but now with huge open fields between all the levels. Right. With occasional enemies and useless crafting ingredients just scattered everywhere. Well, yeah, but... And let me guess, it also adds unnecessary stealth and an instantly summonable horse. Are those bad things? Not at all, if that's what you were in it for. Good. But don't confuse it for Dark Souls. We need new video game genre names so badly. Dark Souls is a Rubik's Cube, whereas Elden Ring is a scavenger hunt on a golf course. See what we're reduced to? Elden Ring is Dark Souls in basically every way except the map is now a massive continent, and instead of finding keys and clearing objectives to navigate the world, you basically kill whatever monster or demigod happens to be in your way along a critical path to unlock more of the map one chunk at a time. How is it that every single Dark Souls successor misses the most important aspect of the game? But still, this is a huge undertaking transitioning Dark Souls into a massive open world. Okay, well, modernized generic open world with lots of empty space haphazardly thrown between all the traditional game elements in hopes of disguising all the loading going on behind the scenes. It's still Dark Souls at heart. You'll fight tough enemies, explore treacherous environments, and die over and over again, respawning at the new knockoff bonfires, which also serve to point the way towards your next objective. So these are called grass. No, it definitely says grace. Then why do you gain enlightenment from touching it? Grass it is. So whenever you touch grass, you'll not only gain the ability to warp at almost any time to this new location, but there's also a good chance that you'll be able to see the direction the grass is pointing, gently guiding you towards the critical path. Or that guiding light will actually lead you around corners toward the grass itself to help you touch it in the first place. One thing this game's got loads of is boss fights, though there's quite a lot of repeats. And considering the fact that this game's almost completely open, you will almost certainly find them out of any intended order, making some outrageously hard and others disappointingly easy. At least a third of the time, I'd brace myself stepping through the fog wall only to be immediately let down by a boss I'd already seen before. Or I'd one-shot them before I'd even get a chance to see their moveset. No, this wasn't some crazy optimized run. Far from it. This was my first sloppy playthrough dual-wielding halberds, which you can go watch in its entirety, shameless plug. This also has the Dark Souls 3 problem where bosses are more of a spectacle than a threat you'd be slamming your head against for 30 minutes. He'd finish the livestream and completely forget any of the bosses that we faced and couldn't even tell you which ones were supposed to be important and which ones weren't. Yeah, it was weird how I would effortlessly put down a boss in the ground and suddenly get gifted a unique boss item akin to a traditional boss soul. Each time I was like, oh, you were supposed to be important? It also seemed that each boss had some sort of spammy instant win attack that completely threw off what would have been a fair fight. Each Dark Souls boss explores a new concept you have to brace with and overcome. Elden Ring just throws its 13th dragon at you and just buffs its attack and HP and calls it a day. Not to gripe on the bosses, it's just that the ones that beat me up did so in seemingly unfair ways, when in Dark Souls it was always unique, fair, and challenging. And the rest were so forgettable I had to rewatch my own streams to remind myself who the NPCs in stream chat were even talking about. Upside to being open world, there are huge caves, elaborate dungeons, and deep underground chasms that span most of the map. There's even unique enemies and items to find in practically every corner of the world, and that is awesome! Oh yeah, I'm that weirdo who's looking at the undead abomination crawling at me out of a crypt thinking, wow, I haven't seen those animations or bone structures in any other creature in the entire game, instead of, zombies! Downside to being open world, we've now got a cumbersome and rarely useful crafting system to justify picking up all the garbage scattered around the place, and a teleporting ghost horse existing solely to allow us to zip all over the empty space and lessen the monotony that comes with an open world. Your stupid horse torrent feels good at first until you get into combat, or try some treacherous platforming, and then it suddenly feels like you're riding on a piglet in ice skates. You'll get knocked off of torrent easily and take massive critical damage when you do, and sometimes the dumb animal just randomly won't revive with full HP even after you rest. It's such a frustrating flighty show pony, you'll quickly learn to abandon it in combat unless you like unfair one-hit kill deaths. If Dark Souls is condensed and refined, Elden Ring goes wide, diluting itself with its own scale. Yes, there is cool stuff to discover, but it comes at the expense of the dense, intricately crafted level design that I personally crave in these games. Yeah, it would take decades to properly develop the game at this scale. So to cut corners, areas are stuffed with the same lazy enemy placements you see everywhere. In large areas, patrolling enemies alert the others nearby to swarm you, and in tight spaces, it's always the same ambush after ambush. It is genuinely fun for the first dozens of hours, but eventually you'll start to realize that the haphazardly arranged levels are all functionally the same, and nothing like the constantly evolving organic masterpiece that was Dark Souls 1. Hey, smashing face with a halberd in each arm felt great! Except for all the unfair boss AoE attacks and the monotonous horseback riding and the endless ambushes and that one frictionless rolling fat guy. So it was great except for all the parts that it wasn't. That about sums it up. You wanna know what's the best part of this game? No contest, it's the art style. The lands between are beautiful. Almost every area has its own color palette and visual flair with unique enemies found nowhere else. It's completely understandable to play this game solely for the visual spectacle alone. Then why is the same merchant copy-pasted all over the map with differently colored Santa Claus clothes as if we wouldn't recognize the fact that it's the same character model? Yeah, that's awful, but the disturbing, abominable creatures contrast perfectly with the magnificent allure of the fantastical landscape. Watching two colossal trolls impaled through their backs, chained to a train-sized black funeral carriage with the glowing lights of the Erd tree in the distance as its golden leaves flutter down around you. It's a work of art. At least the NPCs are still on point. We've got a talking warrior pot, omnipotent fingers, and a pope tortoise. Bring it on, I live for the crazy. You are known as a Tarnished, seeking great runes held by various powerful shard bearers in order to reconstruct the shattered Elden Ring and become the next Elden Lord at the base of the Erd tree. But what does any of that actually mean? I spent 100 hours in this game and I have absolutely no idea. Kinda sucks we never got any clear explanation for the most basic of elements to the plot, so I instead opted to watch hours of lore videos after beating the game so someone could explain to me what any of this was even about. But even after all of that, I still have absolutely no idea. Obviously, this game is going to be told through context clues and item descriptions like before, and I'm cool with that. But when half of the names and locations sound just like other names and locations, it's no wonder you'll find yourself unnecessarily tangled up and confused. Melina and Malenia, Radon and Radagon, Godwin, Godric, Godfrey, goddamn, this is like the first thing you learn to avoid in any creative writing class. What really sucks is after spending all that time actually digging into the lore, I found out that everything basically boiled down to a petty Game of Thrones for demigods. Guess George R.R. Martin's stories are just about as various as his character names. Problem is, that's just not an interesting concept for lore when there is nothing to be intrigued by. Why did this character do this thing or fight us here? Well, they were fighting over the shards for the Elden Ring. Every single time. For lore to be interesting, there needs to be a reason for the players to be invested other than the basic curiosity of the game never explaining anything. You hear corny eye rollers like destined death and are still expected to take this pretentious crap seriously. So if you just play the game, you'll only end up confused. And if you look it up, you'll realize it was just Greek mythology as written by Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, this can't just be me, but I get this nails on a chalkboard feeling whenever I hear droning low-pitched strings instead of silence or ambiance. And unfortunately, if you're not in a boss fight, that is the entire soundtrack. Oh boy, do I feel bad for anybody who bought the OST. The first entire hour is nothing but monotone humming, stringy noise. It's like listening to somebody cut imaginary meat on a dinner plate when you're just trying to play a video game. The boss tracks are obviously the highlight, though I personally found this batch to be the most samey and forgettable in the series. Kind of ironic that all the music blends together in my head just like all the bosses and backstories and names, and this is one of the highest rated video games ever made, and I don't think either of us will be giving it a perfect score. It goes to show what a 10 actually means from us. Granted, that's coming from all the posers who praised Tears of the Kingdom, so it looks like nobody's track record for judging quality is unmarred. This truly feels like the first honest successor to Dark Souls we have ever gotten. Yes, a lot of that modern open world blah brings it down, but it is still at heart a magnificent game. On a technical and artistic level, this game is a masterpiece, let's not undersell that. But for the sake of a review, I'm gonna stick my nose right in its butt crack because a review isn't fair unless it's honestly judging every single aspect. Yeah, like some obscure stuff really sucks this time around, but the rest is great. Like how watching speedruns of the series is notoriously intense and nerve-wracking, but an Elden Ring speedrun is just a horse running for an hour between a few wrong warp exploits. If Dark Souls is a pool, then Elden Ring is an ocean, and that alone seems to give it the idea that now it's suddenly okay to piss where you swim. The positive gamer in me had an enjoyable enough ride with Elden Ring to summon a slightly tarnished 8 out of 10. Though it's a genuine marvel, it's the first Souls game I have next to no interest in revisiting. It's great for one massive playthrough that eventually overstays its welcome. The critical gamer in me is unashamed to shatter the perfect perception of Elden Ring with a 9 out of 10. That's still a really good score, but look what I have to compare this to. This game is obviously the spiritual successor to Dark Souls, and if I'm comparing it to that, it's not a masterpiece. But what do you think? Let us know how your positive and critical sides rate Elden Ring in the comments below. Mindlessly conforming to the general consensus makes you a true dung eater, incapable of forming your own opinions. So broaden your horizons and touch some grass. Otherwise, you're just playing with yourself. Look at me, I finished writing and filming this episode of Playing With Myself the day before it has to go live. And I had 2 weeks to do this. I am so great at planning. I really hope nobody noticed I grabbed the wrong controller this time. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more, and use the links in the description to nominate your own episode. And thank you to all of our Patreon members: Arrow, Aspen, Crystal, Sid, Genio, Laura, and Squad Fam. Booyah!